you. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so we want to just tell a few stories from yesteryear and pass the mic around a little bit here. So my first story is probably one of our greatest family vacations. When we were all quite young, we flew out to California to see our grandparents in Redondo Beach, rented a Winnebago, and drove around the Southwest, and that was really cool around the New Mexico and Arizona. And one time, my father was doing probably 99% of the driving. And we were somewhere in the deserts of Arizona, stopped for gas. And we brought our beloved little dog, Terry, with us. She made the trip. So it was the 6 of us. And so we got gas and we took off throughout the desert. And about 45 minutes later, I said from the rear of the Winnebago, I said, "Is Terry up there?" And no one really was listening to me. And "Is Terry up there?" And "No." "Is she back?" "No." "Where's Terry?" And we realized we left her at the gas station a good 45 miles back. And so I never saw anyone make a U-turn in a Winnebago like my father did at that time. He just screeched to a halt and he floored that sucker all the way back, going as fast as it possibly could to the gas station, and our entire family was just in tears thinking that this was going to turn out to be the worst vacation in the world if we lost our dog. But she was there, and the gas attendant said that every car that came up, she would just bark at the car and just wait for us to come back. And so, thanks to his skillful driving, we got our dog back.
Well, on the theme of driving, there was just one other little incident, it wasn't really an incident, thank God, but on the way to the Arizona deserts, we drove from Los Angeles and we were first visiting our friends the Ferbers who lived up in Lake Arrowhead. And if any of you are familiar with that drive, it's a 2-lane winding road that goes up about 8,000 feet into the mountains, and there are usually no guardrails, and it's about a 19,000 foot drop off on the end of the road. And Dad was taking it, the skilled driver he is, just doing just fine. With the rest of us, looking out the side window of the car, you couldn't even see the road. You're just looking down hundreds of feet at this steep thing, and so we were all fairly terrorized, but he actually was doing just fine. We all arrived safely, and that kind of reminds me of my early driving experience, as was mentioned earlier by Wes. I feel my dad is an excellent driver, and I remember learning to drive. He had an MG BGT, a TR3, which I still think is one of the most beautiful cars in the world, and an Opel GT. So for years, those were his 3 cars, and then I think starting at about, I don't know, 6 or 7, he would take me out, no, probably 12 or 13, and start learning to drive. And we'd go into these country roads, and he would just show me everything, the shifting and all that, and just was very astute at teaching me the finer points of driving. And in my earlier years, I used to go for about 4 or 5 years to a boy car school in Princeton that was on the way to his train station where he would take the train into New York. So every morning I had the pleasure of driving with him in the morning. We would kind of commute together, as it were, and it was just a really quality time that I remember having, even though it was 7-something in the morning. But it was just some really great times and conversations, and I'll just never forget the quality experience. And I still, to this day, when I drive, even though I don't have I have an automatic transmission now, but anytime I get to do a manual transmission, I'll notice that my technique for driving, I'll notice some little tricks that he showed me 40 years ago that I still drive with. And there are little ways of handling the steering wheel around a corner or something, and I'll just kind of remember, oh yeah, that was Dad's trick. Anyway, so that was a fun one.
Good.
This story amplifies the tenacity and fairness part of my dad. It's the early 80s, and he is living on the 6th floor of the Brevard on 52nd Street on the east side of Manhattan. And those that know him know that there is one thing every single morning he must have, and that is the New York Times. He'll simply call it the Times. I remember growing up on a Sunday, I had the pleasure of getting to bring him his Miller beer in cans as he sweat on the back porch while reading every word of the Times. Now we fast forward to about 1982, and 3, 4, 5 days in a row, he opens the front door at 6 in the morning, and the Times is not at his doorstep. And he's an upset man, and he calls the Times, "Where the H is my paper? Let me check with the carrier, Bill. We'll get right back to Bill. It's been delivered. It's been delivered." So again, the next day, there's no Times. He's flipping out. "Where's my paper?" "Bill, they're delivering the paper. Something's going on with your New York Times." So, the tenacity. He says, "Okay, maybe there's somebody here on the 6th floor that's getting a free New York Times." So, he waits up all night. 4 in the morning, the Times is delivered to his door. He opens up the door, he takes a needle and a thread, threads the paper underneath the door, and ties it to a cat toy with a bell. Sits in the middle of the hallway and falls asleep, but with just one eye closed and one eye open and the ear open as well. And he's waiting for that bell to ring. About an hour later, the bell rings. He jumps to his feet, opens the door, and there's a guy about 6 doors down that he doesn't know on his floor, tiptoeing away with his Times. And boy, did he ever give it to him. "Get your old paper! This is my Times!" And he went off on the guy, and his Times was there for the rest of his life. And his tenacity.